Thank you, Mairead. Mr Agnew, please, and the Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. I've got three questions for the panel, two of which are specific to my own country, Great Britain, and the third is more general. Looking at our sugar industry in Britain, you could say that two organisations have dominant positions. The National Farmers Union is the only organisation that negotiates on behalf of growers with the processor British Sugar, and British Sugar has the monopoly on actually refining the sugar. So there are two cases there of dominant positions, but the result doesn't appear to be a scandal. Sugar sells by the bag in supermarkets, the public aren't screaming in the streets about how much they have to pay for it. Can you assure me that this scenario, this arrangement, is not under threat by the legislation? Secondly, the term dominant hasn't actually been defined. Does that mean over 50% of the market? Does anyone have any ideas on that? And I wondered, would this legislation cut across our Competition Commission in Britain? Would it push that to one side and override it? On a more general point, do the panel believe that the legislation will have a similar effect in each EU state, despite the very, very big differences and disparities in the size of the national markets? Thank you.
Prego, professor Jannarelli. Sì, dunque vorrei rispondere, ma...
Okay, to respond to a general point on what the UK representative said, and sugar, by way of example. Now the question being, well, it allows us to clarify our thoughts on what we are about and the limits of this document, because we have to bear in mind one thing. As an objective datum of the current industrial world, the idea that farmers, by way of structure, are much weaker economic subjects than other people because their markets are very inelastic. Now, for many years we've tried to protect and to react to that sort of structural weakness via a price policy. So I've tried to raise the problem of failure of the market being looked at via prices. Once you bring in a price control mechanism, obviously the only tool identified for defending farmers is associations in order to balance up the contractual power, the muscle of their opposite numbers. So here, strangely, the Commission, what they're trying to do is bring in this idea of abuse of dominant position. And that is actually, in fact, to the detriment of farming as against other sectors, because 132 of the treaties just goes against abuse of dominant position, but doesn't stop companies at European level to be dominant. So, strangely, in farming, as it happens, it's not possible to have a dominant position. And well, my colleague is arguing that, in theory, we should foster setting up a structure, a regional structure, not via market, but a regional structure which helps rural policy. So what we're worried about, or should be worried about, is the abuse of dominant position. And it's odd, in farming, you're trying to stop setting up producer organizations. But the other thing to bear in mind is avoiding confusing the operational measures of antitrust discipline at member state level with the community application of such, because national authorities are called upon obviously to implement community law, but in addition they implement national law. Come back to what your colleague said. For British Sugar and the actions correspondingly undertaken, if there was European level abuse, then obviously you'd have to bring in competition law at European level. But if that is not the case, you're looking at a phenomenon which is of relevance only for, say, the UK, you would just have competition legislation at UK level, UK competition law being applied. So when you look at European competition, that's an anomaly if you want to bring in a ban recognizing associations which have a dominant position, because this is a discrimination between legal subjects which are individuals and those which are associations of individuals. So farming should get specific attention, i.e. some sort of positive law to protect farmers and farm producers. But unfortunately, what we've got here is something which looks at the farming world, in particular producer organizations. That's the only thing they can resort to, because obviously prices won't help them. They have to associate, and therefore they do get, of necessity, a dominant position, and you're going against that. So if you're punishing the if you have these dominant positions, it might well give rise to higher prices at the end. But this is not the case here, because they actually have a weak position, and therefore that is why you have the gap: weak prices for producers, high prices for consumers, and it's in between that you've got to act. So a strong mechanism there might be the way to go ahead. In a way, here, it's only acquiring a dominant position, a strong market position, that they can defend themselves against the contractual muscle of their industrial opposite numbers. So basically, you've got to make sure that this does not give rise to some sort of damage for price levels for consumers. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.